It's a beautiful sound.
One that we haven't been using a lot. A lot of the news has been beyond parody, but I felt it was especially appropriate here, given the nature of this story that I'm about to bring up, but also just generally with a lot of Trump news this week.
Yeah.
Just pretty insane.
Yeah, that guy, he's just throwing shit at the wall.
Yeah. Really, he's trying to see what sticks, and I don't think a whole lot is sticking. But this story here, so Trump, for context, this a couple of days ago, Trump went to a Moms for Liberty conference.
Yeah.
And he took a speaking position there. Of course, Moms of Liberty, very concerned with school board meetings.
Very concerned
and
with
gay people.
Yeah, just the wrong things.
Yes.
Very concerned with evil things.
Yeah, Moms for Liberty, enemy of the show.
Enemy of the show. Comic-Con for moms whose kids are gonna never talk to them again once they move out.
Yeah. So Trump was there for maybe like 45 minutes to an hour. I don't know exactly how long it was. It was hard to find clips because what I'm about to read to you, I wanted to find a video clip for it, but basically nowhere had actually
the
posted
Clippers
it.
didn't get to it. It's
Exactly.
ridiculous. We can't let Moms for Liberty get away with this stuff.
Now, of course, Moms for Liberty, their whole thing is parental rights, which is just code for making it impossible to exist as gay in school, in public schools.
Yeah.
And punishing teachers that are inclusive of gay and trans students, because if you punish them for being inclusive, they won't be inclusive, and it's harder to be gay or trans at school.
A group that just spearheads book bannings for anything that has any LGBTQ plus related content. Weren't they also the center of like a campaign to get rid of this one book that was about healing sexual trauma?
It was either them or one of the similar groups.
Yeah, they all do the same thing.
Yeah.
Either way, they're about that.
So Trump was at this event. He was speaking. He started off trying to speak about immigration, but like that's not their thing. I'm sure they hate immigrants. You know what I mean? But their whole shtick is not related to immigration at the very least. But Trump, he did have something to say about the LGBTQ, more specifically trans people. And I felt it was important to bring up because, we're having this sort of public debate, especially now, but certainly before when Biden was still in the race, about how much harm is actually reduced by voting for the Democrat. You know what I mean? And we'll do our fair share of shitting on Kamala Harris in this episode.
Absolutely.
She made a bunch of fumbles this past week that we'll talk about, at least in our opinion. But I think it is still important sometimes to highlight the threat that someone like Trump still poses to marginalized groups in this country. And so I want to read you this quote. This is Trump at the Moms for Liberty conference. He said, quote, "The transgender thing is incredible. Think about it. Your kids go to school and your kid goes to school and comes home a few days later with an operation. The school decides what's going to happen with your child, and many of these children 15 years later say, 'What the hell happened? Who did this to me?'"
That's
just fucking lying.
That's so just beyond parody. That is
Egregious.
So genuinely insane. How can he get away with just getting up there and saying that?
Yeah, he said they go to school and a few days later they come home with an operation. One, just lying to fearmonger about trans people and inclusive policies in schools.
And it's like, I'm sure the audience absolutely ate that up.
Oh, absolutely.
That's their thing. Oh my God.
Moms for Liberty, that's their whole shtick. So he's lying just to fearmonger about trans people. And just like statistically, trans people, trans kids are a incredibly small portion of the U.S. population or school populations. Fear-mongering about them in this way is just, it's meant to drum up hate and panic and feed into the broader moral panic. And it's just a reminder that Trump, even if he doesn't talk about LGBTQ stuff a lot, is still very much a threat because of who he will appoint and who he tries to court for his administration.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, man. And it's like that statement there is just, it is so far beyond even the regular just lies that they tell about trans kids. They always say that like, oh, the teachers are grooming them into becoming this. Doctors are pushing these procedures. There's an insurance scam that's going on so that the medical industry and big pharma or whatever can profit off of HRT and gender reassignment surgeries. That's already a lie. And this is just so much beyond that. I can't even comprehend it damn near.
Yeah, here he's not saying that like, oh, teachers sort of socially groom them into wanting to be trans. It's the school is doing the operation.
Oh, your daughter goes to school and she comes home 2 days later, she's a boy.
Like, first of all, what the fuck are we talking about? Second of all, schools can't afford like notebooks for students.
I'm saying.
They're not doing gender reassignment.
Teachers are out here paying for the pencils that they lend out to kids every day.
Yes.
It's not, teachers are out here getting like $100 to decorate and furnish their classrooms. They are not sponsoring gender reassignment surgeries.
Yeah, it's just more evidence, if you needed it, that Trump will be incredibly harmful, not only in terms of foreign policy, as we've argued before, but domestically to marginalized groups here that desperately need protection. Not good.
Not good at all.
No. Welcome back to Head in the Office, everybody. Today, we'll be talking about debates.
Yes, we will.
Because this is the last episode that the Wednesday Weenies will get before the debate happens. Our next episode will, unfortunately, be recorded before the debate because it's on a Tuesday, September 10th, as we'll talk about. But this is the final public episode that you'll be getting from us before the debate happens. So we're going to be doing our debate predictions today.
Yep.
And talking about what Kamala Harris needs to do to quote-unquote win. And we'll... I don't know if we'll stress out about it, but we will, I suppose, criticize her for recent public appearances.
Yeah, I'll spoiler alert, I'm kind of stressed out about it.
Yeah.
I can't lie.
We also had Trump appear at Arlington. We'll talk about that later in this episode. We've got Gaza news, of course, #1 geopolitical podcast. But before we get into all of that, I will remind you all to head over to patreon.com.
Please.
/headintheofficepod.
Please
and
do.
Become a patron.
We've proven with the reviews that it works when we beg. So I'm here before you, unhumbly, just begging for you to check that out. You know what I mean? I'm sick of capitulating to these Wednesday Weenies.
Exactly. And it's not a charity. We're not running a charity here. You'd go over there, you get early access to all of our episodes.
Yep.
If you're an angel investor, you'll get the occasional free item.
Yeah,
and if you're a $5 tier and up, you'll get a postcard, and we're about to order the second round of postcards here after this episode.
Brand new designs, people.
Yeah, brand new designs every 2 months.
Hiddo design to add to the collection, the burgeoning collection, the new collection. Come on now, folks.
Yeah.
And speaking of charity, while we're not a charity, there are charities that exist out there. Charities like PCRF, who we notably did a fundraiser for during the, I don't even want to call it a presidential debate anymore because Biden dropped out, during the Biden v. Trump dropout match. And we are happy to announce that we will be doing another fundraiser for PCRF during the Kamala Harris versus Trump actual real presidential debate, the main event on, what is it, Tuesday, September 9th?
September 10th.
September 10th.
Tuesday, September 10th. We'll be starting at 8 p.m. The debate starts at 9 p.m., but of course we have our pre-show starting at 8 p.m. Last time around, we raised more than $3,000 for PCRF.
It's pretty good.
That's Palestine Children's Relief Fund. And I was very proud of the community.
Absolutely.
Who knows if we'll get that much this time around. But we'll be fundraising for PCRF once again, and I hope you all come out.
Please
Very excited about it, yeah.
And come on, you gotta come out. It's the presidential.
Yeah, and it's tragic that the debate is on a Tuesday.
Yeah.
That is upset. When it was on a Thursday, that was great because the episode came out and then the debate happened.
It was damn near perfect for the Wednesday Weenies and the Sunday Supremacists.
I think it's the same way for the VP debate. I think October 1st is a Tuesday.
Damn.
Which, you know what? Whatever. We'll take what we can get. But we will be fundraising at this next live stream, so I hope you all come out. I hope you're interested in watching it live with us. And we'll get into that debate coverage, or I guess our debate predictions, in just a moment. But first, we got to read our 1 5-star review on Apple that we got, because that's another great way you can support the show. Not only can you become a patron, get some Hiddo merch, follow us on socials and so on, come to the live stream, but you can also leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts,
completely
and we'll
for free.
read it here on the show. This one is by Poop and Shit Man is a superhero. The brainworms are attacking. Based on that name, it seems like they are. This review says, I had to write this review before losing my ability to think from the RFK brainworms currently nestled inside my skull. First off, every morning I wake up and condemn Hamas and political violence before I can continue with my day.
As you should.
Then I pray for the Wednesday Weenies to be enlightened to attend Sunday sermons. This podcast allows me to consume my woke propaganda in an entertaining and funny way, while otherwise being depressed by the political landscape. It's nice to see people my age making a difference and helping educate others. Love from the communist hell state of California.
Let's go. Model review right there.
Yeah,
Let me
poop
tell
and
you.
shit, man.
That one, I'm a child. That one got me.
Yeah, that's a good review. I'm glad, don't be depressed. Things are looking up.
Maybe we all have some RFK brainworms inside our head.
Maybe the brainworm is the friend we made along the way.
Exactly.
We're interrupting this episode to let you know that we were special guests on a podcast called Point of Disorder just a few days ago. And that episode will be coming out on Thursday of this week. That's Thursday, the 5th of September. That episode will be coming out. We'll link it in the description once it comes out, so you can come back to this episode and listen. But it's a lot of fun. We talked about some cool stuff. Gen Z, the youth vote, uncommitted vote in Michigan.
That's right. We got some extra content for you all, for all you content brain folks. On top of the debate, oh my God, it's going to be a hit of September.
So if you want to check that out, you should. Point of Disorder. It's a cool podcast, and of course, your Hiddo boys were there. So
exactly. Come on now.
You gotta
go check it out.
So now's the time.
Yes.
To finally talk about the real debates. We had a debate pre-show back in June, but That doesn't fucking matter.
Exactly.
I knew the whole time it wasn't going to matter.
Like June, that's literally 10 years ago.
It was, yeah.
In the amount of history that's happened in the last month, that is 10 years ago, I swear.
Yeah.
Whew.
So boys, girls, NBs, our glorious and dedicated Hiddo heads. It's almost debate week.
Yeah.
For us, it's about 9-10 days away.
Oh, God, that's
for you. If you're listening,
riveting.
if you're listening to this on Wednesday, less than a week.
Yeah.
So we're very excited. Well, of course, as Gage said at the top of the episode, we will be live next Tuesday, September 10th at 8 p.m. Eastern time. That is 1 hour before the debate starts. We'll be making a bingo card, of course.
Yes,
as is tradition.
Exactly.
We'll be launching our predictions. We'll be getting hype. Again, we'll be fundraising for PCRF. But before we get into our sort of unique, interesting, once-in-a-lifetime live coverage of the debate, we got to give our pinpoint, and I'd say humble,
I think so,
analysis and predictions for what's going to be in this
H in
debate.
Hiddo stands for humble.
Yeah. Yeah, so we gotta get into what we're gonna be seeing at this debate. So as I said, Kamala Harris and Donald Trump will have their first debate live on ABC on Tuesday, September 10th, starting at 9 p.m. Provided Trump actually shows up, of course, because he's been sort of edging us this past week.
I know.
I don't know what I'm pretty sure he's gonna be at the debate, but he keeps kind of repeatedly saying like, "Well, I don't know, maybe they want to cancel."
There was like 2 days there where it was kind of like almost called off, and then he recommitted his, I guess, support to want to show up, and now he's just been wishy-washy.
Yeah, it's weird, but I'm pretty sure he's going to be there. I don't think he can get out of this one.
No.
Yeah. It seems like the rules are going to be exactly the same as the Biden debate. That's no audience, no notes. Mics are turned off when it's not your turn. 2 commercial breaks in about 90 minutes in duration.
And no props.
No props.
Damn,
we're not getting the Herschel Walker.
No poop map.
No poop map. That would be good too if he whipped out a poop map at San Francisco. Look what your city turned
Look
into.
What this is.
So yeah, the rules are basically the same. The analysis of the rules here is basically the same as last time around. Mics being turned off helps Donald Trump.
Yeah.
And I think that was proven last time around.
And it's like mics being turned off just forces him to behave correctly. Like I thought last time that he was going to at least try to speak in and have like his voice picked up by Joe Biden's mic, but that really only happened like maybe kind of once.
Yeah.
It wasn't a thing. He actually behaved himself, and you don't want Trump to behave himself.
Yeah, he looks worse when he is just unhinged.
Exactly.
And you can hear his every thought. And so we first were like confused why the Biden campaign wanted mics off, or like why they agreed to that. And lately we've been seeing the Harris-Walz campaign basically switch it up, and they were saying, because Trump had said live a couple of times that he didn't want the mics muted, the Harris campaign was basically saying like, oh, well, then we shouldn't have the mics muted. They were trying to like lobby to change the rules, which doesn't seem like it's going to work. But I heard somewhere that the reason Biden wanted the Biden team wanted the mics muted was because Biden was going to have a hard time understanding the questions.
Come on, man.
If Trump could speak like over the moderators, or Trump could speak over him. It was an old thing. Because now Harris wants to switch it up.
That's so good.
Yeah.
I don't understand why they can't switch it up if both candidates come to the table and agree.
I don't know. Maybe they're not doing it directly. They're just trying to like prod Donald Trump into making it happen.
I guess.
But yeah, just say like, let's unmute the mics.
Yeah.
Let's have at it, because that's what helped Joe Biden back in 2020. And I think it would help Harris right now. So let's talk strategy. We should try to think about what each candidate needs to do. And I think the major weaknesses of both candidates, because that's what's sort of going to get exploited here.
Yeah.
I would say Harris's biggest weaknesses are, number one, flip-flopper.
Yes.
That's going to be the biggest accusation, and not unfounded.
Not unfounded at all.
A politician's job is lie.
Hey, I was talking a couple weeks ago how, honestly, it can kind of be a strength. It can be a strength sometimes, but I don't know if, honestly, after the interview, my opinions on how she's going to be able to handle the debate almost did a 180.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I don't think she's prepared to answer the flip-flopper question any meaningful way. You know what I mean? Because she couldn't.
Yeah, and that was, so I guess we could talk about the interview real quick.
We can kind of intersperse it in between like what we're going on
to. But just so listeners know what we're talking about, Kamala Harris and Tim Walz had their first major interview since they had been introduced to the public as the two candidates that are going to be on the ticket. They did it with CNN with Dana Bash. I think it was like 20 minutes in total of like edited footage. It wasn't a live interview.
It was 20 minutes of like actual content, and then another 10 minutes of like
commentary.
What was
type
it
shit.
like when Biden stepped down?
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
yes.
that was,
yes.
and it was split into 3 parts. CNN
Yeah.
split into 3 10-minute segments. I thought that I wasn't going to be able to find the full interview. I thought I missed it until I actually learned that no, it's just 3 parts.
CNN desperately trying to get those views up.
Golly.
Doing anything they can to get those views up. Anti-consumerist behavior. But so they did this interview. Tim Walz basically didn't speak the entire time. He had like 2 questions, and they were both the same thing. Why do you lie so much?
It was, why do you lie? Why'd you get a DUI?
Yeah.
I like that he...
But the questions for Kamala Harris, and this feeds into what we might see at the debate. She was asked about the flip-flopping a couple of times, which is fair. Like
Specifically, like in the context of fracking.
it was fracking, and it was immigration, citizenship.
Yes.
Because in like 2019 or 2020, she had said something along the lines of like, and a lot of Democrats were on this line because Trump was in office, saying like crossing the border isn't inherently illegal, and you shouldn't be treated as a criminal simply for crossing the border because asylum laws and stuff like that. And she had reiterated that point, and so Dana Bash pressed her on it, saying like, do you still believe that? Of course, she switched up, and she has a more conservative position now. Same with fracking. 2019 or 2020, she said she wanted to ban fracking. Now she's saying, well, I've been clear since 2020. I want to keep fracking.
And it's like, why are you saying that you've been clear since 2020 that you want to keep fracking when you so demonstrably have not?
Yeah.
That is just not something, that's not an attack you need to open yourself up to. In my opinion, you get up there and the Harris Walz campaign is so obviously trying to do everything they can to capture moderates and the Nikki Haley voter. You know what I mean?
Nikki Haley cohort from New Hampshire.
They are trying so hard to capture moderate Republicans, if that's even a thing that exists. If you want to capture them, moderate Republicans and moderates in general love being perpetual fence sitters. They love thinking that they are smart people who will change their opinions when new information is presented. If you want to capture them, you need to make yourself sound like somebody who will do that. If Kamala Harris got up there and said, yeah, in 2020, this is how I felt about this, and then throughout my presidency, as I traveled across the country to places like Pennsylvania, because when you're talking about fracking in the context of this election,
You're talking about Pennsylvania.
It is only Pennsylvania. You know what I mean?
Well, there's like other states, but they're all red. So,
Exactly.
like West
It doesn't
Virginia,
matter.
it doesn't
Pennsylvania
matter.
is the only one she can win where fracking
Yes,
is actually
yes.
a huge issue that the people kind of support, right?
Yeah.
You say, well, traveling across the country, traveling to places like Pennsylvania and listening to the voters, I decided to amend my positions. Yeah, maybe they're not my convictions. Maybe they're not my firmly held beliefs, but they're what the voters want. And as a representative of the voters on the national level, I need to meet their demands. I am your representative. I am there to represent the things that you want. Why doesn't anyone get out there and talk like that?
Well, yeah, and it's like you can change your positions over time. It's a very human thing to do.
Yeah, especially over 4 years.
Everybody changes their position. So if she would have come out and just said, like, yeah, exactly, after traveling to Pennsylvania, speaking to the voters, speaking to people throughout the country, I once thought we needed a complete ban on fracking, but I think X, Y, and Z would be more efficient or effective.
Oh my God, literally. And then you can gas up the Pennsylvania voter again because they love to think they're so powerful. And I mean, they are.
Yeah,
Like,
unfortunately, yeah. 10,000 of them that will decide the election
golly.
are very powerful. Or even better would be saying, you know, doing the capitulation thing where you're saying, like, yeah, we can't completely ban fracking. It has to stick around in some capacity. And then $100 billion every year for a federal green jobs program.
Yes.
Building up green energy infrastructure and making the U.S. lead the way.
Those things
green
also
energy
don't
globally.
have to exist in opposition. I would like it if they did. I'm
Yeah.
not a fan of fracking, but I'm also not running in Pennsylvania. You know what I mean? I recognize the politics there. But it's like you can say, like, yeah, I recognize how important fracking is to a place like Pennsylvania, because you're talking to Pennsylvania with that question, while also saying on the way we can start transitioning to green energy without completely abandoning what's got us here.
Yeah, and that's my broader issue with Kamala Harris in this interview is that it lacks a cohesive narrative to tie the campaign together.
Yeah.
It's sort of just like picking out of the air different policies that you think will work with different electorates and trying to mash them together without like an overarching storyline or some kind of narrative to, again, tie the campaign together. You can make the argument that we can't completely ban fracking because you've listened to Pennsylvania voters and then pivot and say, but that's not what Trump does. Trump just cares about, protecting his own hide. He's a criminal, blah, 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 blah. But she doesn't really do that. And it's especially evident with immigration.
Yeah.
The Democrats at this point have almost at least Harris and Biden have completely co-opted the Republican stance on immigration. But as we've said before, that's sort of out of line with what Democrats have said historically, at least under the Trump administration. And they're pivoting to this position on immigration saying that we need to be stronger on the border, basically giving Republicans in Congress everything that they want. But this doesn't tie into any broader narrative. It's just them trying to recuperate what they see are losses with moderate voters. And that's incredibly frustrating because if you co-opt the Republican messaging on the issue, you just give ground to their arguments.
Yeah.
And sure, you might peel off a couple of voters, but in an election where margins really matter, I don't think you're going to get that many. You're just going to give ground to people that already think immigration's a big issue, and if they do, they're going to go with Trump.
I don't know if in general, like, the campaign is trying to avoid like focusing so much. I feel like they're trying to do this thing where it's like, let's bring it back to policy instead of attacks. But it's like, one, their policy narrative, their policy vibes are not strong, not strong at all. And she's foregoing these easy opportunities to attack Trump. There was another moment in the interview where she was asked about Trump's various "she's not black" comments, and she just said, "Let's move on." And I've seen analysis, or next question, like that's ridiculous, whatever, next question. And I've seen analysis on it that's like, maybe that's the best thing to do. She's not making this like a woke scoldy, like identity politics type thing, but it's like, maybe in my mind, it's like, that's such an easy one to get him on. No one is going to call you a woke scold for thinking that that's crazy.
Just feed it into a broader narrative that Trump focuses on racial antagonism as a replacement for his lack of policy elsewhere. Like, feed it into this narrative that Trump has to pit us against each other, and Kamala Harris can even do the unity thing, but be a bit more substantive than Biden, calling for greater legislation to protect unions and these enhancements to the housing industry that she's been talking about. Like, again, tie it into a broader narrative. That's what I want to see, because I think that's what's more effective. I think what Democrats get so confused about is they confuse what we understand as the median voter with a moderate voter.
Yes.
Moderates are not the median voter.
Yeah.
You have moderates in the political spectrum in the U.S., but the median voter is a person with a very complex and inconsistent web of policy positions. They think abortion is murder, but they also don't want it outlawed.
They're union guys that vote for Trump and support Republicans.
Yeah, the median voter loves unions, but also doesn't want the government to intervene and help anybody in the economy.
Yeah, the median voter loves unions, but hates anyone who voted for the PRO Act.
The median voter would love if insulin was completely free, provided by the government for everybody, but also thinks socialized medicine is like communist and therefore bad.
Yes.
Like, the median voter is a complicated person that I think you win over with the sort of left-wing economic populism that Trump gets to do as right-wing economic populism as a replacement for when Democrats don't do
And that's how he did win those people over. Yeah. There's a playbook that they already kind of like, I don't want to say mastered or perfected, but they already put out a playbook. We could take it.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's like the way that you don't win those median voters over by, let's pretend the median voter cares deeply about immigration. I think they only got to start caring about immigration that deeply because Democrats accept the right-wing framing, but that's another question. But let's say they're worried about the southern border. You don't win those people over by matching the energy of the right wing, because then they'll just vote for the right wing.
Then they'll just think that, okay, these policies are right. Like,
you can win them over
with everything else I like.
You can win them over by saying, okay, let's secure the border, but let's be nicer to immigrants and fund the NGOs and stuff like that. And then you pivot to economic populism. We need to strengthen unions. We need to give more money to the working class. We need to invest in infrastructure. We need to X, Y, and Z. That's how you win over the median voter. You don't do it by offering this like flowery liberal language about these sacred halls and then, I don't know, saying nothing about what, how Donald Trump just distracts from the actual issues.
In fact, it's the flowery language is what loses the median voter, I think. I hate that shit. As someone who I think I would classify myself as a high information voter, I cannot stand that at all. Yeah. Oh my God.
Because it doesn't mean anything. It was like when she said, what was it? Like, leadership is about lifting people up, not pushing them down. It's like, yeah, okay.
That's a good message, but
I don't think you're wrong, but it's like, what are you going to do for someone who can't afford rent? You know what I mean?
Like, you do, like, again, everyone cares about vibes, but we say it every week. People care about vibes, not policy, right? But there is sort of a vibes policy axis, right? And you have to connect the vibes to policy. Nobody's going to give a shit about the nitty-gritty of the policy, but everybody wants to pretend they care about it. You have to connect that rhetoric of, we don't want to push people down, we want to lift them up, with policies that they feasibly think will lift them up. And that's what Republicans do. People think that fucking trickle-down economics and tax cuts are genuinely going to lift them up when they demonstrably don't.
Yeah, the Trump tariffs, the 10% tariff on everything from China or whatever, people think that's going to help them.
They have mastered the vibes policy axis, and it's something that liberals just don't want to engage with.
Policy doesn't matter if people don't understand it, but it matters insofar as it feeds into the broader narrative about why Donald Trump is bad for the country and what you want to do for the country. And the best way to spin a narrative about how you're going to help the working class is, frankly, doing what Tim Walz has been doing for a long time. But I get it. Kamala Harris is the top of the ticket. He can't outshine her, but she needs to get away from this sort of liberal non-speak and move more towards just strict economic populist language, because that's what motivates people to turn out. And it's the kind of momentum that she needs, that she has right now, at least for the most part still, and she wants to carry her towards Election Day.
Yeah.
I just get worried that she's going to lose a lot of this momentum if she offers conservative answers, especially on Gaza. Her Gaza answer was pretty bad in the interview. Conservative answer on immigration, conservative answer on fracking. It's like, I don't know how Democrats haven't figured it out, but like the median voter is not the moderate voter, and it's sad. And I worry this is going to be reflected at the debate.
It's crazy how she was so obviously just trying to disengage completely from the Gaza question.
Yeah.
The Gaza question from Dana Bash, it's Dana Bash. Like, it's CNN. They're not going to ask you anything fucking crazy. It was just about arms embargo, not even arms embargo, just ceasefire.
She low-key gave her a layup. She's like, you and Biden have been working on a ceasefire deal.
She said, you have been working tirelessly on a ceasefire deal. And Kamala, it's like she finally fucking perked up and was like, no, we're working on a deal, working on it. There needs to be a deal. There needs to be a deal. I'm not going to offer any details on the deal, but there needs to be a deal. I can sympathize with the complex politics behind the position she's in, but like anything better than that, really. Anything better than that.
Yeah. And that's not to say that Dana Bash's questions were good.
No.
A lot of them just accepted the right-wing framing and were just bad.
And it was interesting during the section on economics in part one, the first 10 minutes of the interview. She's just using Bidenomics in the right-wing way. She asked Kamala Harris, after Kamala Harris gave a iffy answer on just the economy, she goes, so do you fully accept Bidenomics? That is completely right-wing framing. I know that Joe Biden was trying to push like, oh yeah, we're doing Bidenomics as a good thing after the Inflation Reduction Act. But notably, they don't do that anymore because it didn't work.
Yeah, it's like if you connect your last name with a policy, it's almost always a bad idea.
Exactly.
Obamacare, Bidenomics, Reaganomics now.
Yes.
Yeah, it's always
like,
bad.
Notably, Democrats have shifted away from that. And the only people that talk about Bidenomics are Republicans. And it's always in a negative way. Implicitly right-wing, right? And I don't even like the answer that she did give when Dana Bash asked her about, what was it? Voters think that under Trump, the economy felt a lot. Essentially, the question was, vibes under Trump were good.
She said, one of your slogans is we're not going back, but what about the people that want to go back to Trump's economy?
Yeah.
That was the question.
Banger question. I don't think she really met the moment. Like, I think that obviously that's a good question, because that's something that this campaign really does need to contend with.
It gets to one of the major contentions in the election. Yeah.
Exactly, and that's what I mean. And I just feel like she forewent opportunities to the vibes are firmly in Trump's favor. When the vibes on this issue are in Trump's favor, you need to kind of combat that with actual, here are the policy things he did that are bad.
Yeah.
She could talk about Trump tariffs. She can talk about how Trump tariffs were genuinely devastating to farmers and how 92% of the tariff revenue that they received from it went to subsidies for farmers. Trump raised subsidies to farmers to historic levels to try and keep up with his trade war, and it didn't even keep food prices down.
Yeah.
That's notable when we're talking about Trump's economy.
Yeah.
Why aren't we bringing shit like that up?
Yeah, definitely mention the tariffs, mention that he gave enormous tax cuts to the richest people in this country, and say that for the first few years of his presidency, he was riding the coattails of Obama's economic recovery. And that's the narrative you need to explain away the few years, the 3 years of success for the economy under Donald Trump, and then COVID hits, and you can blame a bunch of the inflation on what he did during his time.
And the campaign has been trying to do the corporate greed price gouging thing. Perfect opportunity to talk about corporate greed and price gouging. You can talk about how the Trump tax cuts and the slashing to the corporate tax rate and slashing just tax rates in general created an environment where corporations felt emboldened to raise prices on goods, to get away with their greedflation, with shrinkflation, with all these things that your campaign has been bringing up. You can tie something that Trump did to this bad thing that has been polling well.
Yeah.
Why are we taking that opportunity?
And that's what I mean when I talk about narratives, right? Like Trump's focus on immigrants and J.D. Vance's weird focus on women without children.
Yeah.
All of this is a replacement for actual policy, because their actual policy is just cutting taxes for the rich, and making life harder for the working class.
Getting rid of Social Security.
And then when it comes to like Bidenflation or Bidenomics, or like why didn't you fully accomplish everything, or why didn't you do the things that you're talking about doing right now since you're the vice president, you can just say, oh, well, we tried to, but Republicans in the Senate wouldn't let us.
Exactly.
Just blame them. Blame everything on Republicans, but because you don't even have to lie about that.
Exactly. And it's like, I already think it's stupid to ask the question of why aren't you, Kamala Harris, doing these things you claim to be doing now?
And Dana Bash did ask that.
Why are we pretending that the vice president does anything? They don't do anything. But you can combat that question with doing, like you said, my administration, the Biden administration that I am a part of, tried to do these things. Look at Build Back Better.
Yeah.
Look at what we tried to get into Build Back Better. Look at what we did with the Inflation Reduction Act that Republicans took out or tried to remove. These things that were good for you. And hell, even on Trump's economy, you mentioned the Trump tax cuts again, and you say Trump wanted your tax cuts to the middle class to sunset in 2025. He wanted them to go away while the corporate tax rate remains the lowest it's almost ever been?
Yes.
Ridiculous.
Well, I don't know about lowest it's ever been, but very, very
incredibly low
compared to Reagan years.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like, come on, man. Genuinely hire us for debate.
Or just, when it comes to like the Inflation Reduction Act or Build Back Better, pick out like 3 or 4 different policies that didn't pass because of Republicans. For example, the $35 cap on insulin for everybody, not just seniors on Medicare.
Child tax credit.
That was taken out by Republicans. Child tax credit that she did mention, but didn't really stick the landing on it.
She doesn't associate that with being removed by Republicans, though.
Blame Republicans for it because, one, that'll help like Senate and House races because you got to win those too. And voting records do matter when it comes to those races. And then you can also just blame it on Trump. They kind of do this with the immigration deal, but that's like the only thing they do it with.
Yeah, and it's like, I have a feeling that they're trying to shy away from that because they think if they blame Republicans writ large for that, they're not going to capture the moderate Republicans that they want to capture. But like, whatever moderate Republicans that are going to vote for Kamala Harris of all people in this election over Trump already don't really give a shit about that, are already disillusioned with the party. We don't need to make the Democratic Party a safe place for Republicans.
And I'm just not convinced, like statistically, that the moderate Nikki Haley Republican voters are that sizable of a portion in the election.
She lost bigly.
Yeah,
in the primary. Like,
she lost bigly. She won in like New Hampshire was like the only place, right?
Yeah,
something like that.
She won one county in like Iowa or something like that.
It's like I know margins are going to be slim basically everywhere, at least in all the important states. So I get wanting to appeal to them in some way, but again, I think the median voter or even the person who doesn't often vote is far more motivated to vote for you with the sort of left-wing economic working class populism than they are if you talk about how immigration is this massive issue. Not only because I think economic populism is better than blaming everything on minorities, but because I feel like when you give in to the right-wing narrative or the right-wing framing, it just brings more people to the right-wing side because you're just saying what they're saying.
You're legitimizing it.
Yeah.
You're saying, no, this is actually a good idea.
Yeah, except I'm going to do it a little bit better and a little different.
Exactly.
It's not great. But
so silly. I guess back to the debate.
Yeah, the interview was bad.
Yeah.
Dana Bash's questions were bad, but I blame her in the sense that it's like not very good journalism, but it's also like it's not the media's role to make Democrats look good. You know what I'm saying?
And that's kind of how I felt after watching that interview. I both felt like, wow, those questions sucked. They were fully adopting right-wing framing. Also, Kamala Harris's answers were bad. But moving away, I feel like the questions were more warranted because it's like political interviews should be contentious. Like you should be able to contend with what they're saying they're all about.
Well, and if a journalist asks you a bad question, say like, I think the question misses the mark.
Exactly.
You know
and then
what I mean?
Explain why.
Yes.
And then you can just say, I think the question misses the mark. Here's this, and this. Like, honestly, at the end of the day, the responsibility really fully falls on the Harris campaign for being able to combat that and being able to just have good rhetoric.
Yeah.
But like, Jesus Christ, after the George Stephanopoulos interview with Biden, that went horribly. And after this, fire whoever is hiring these people. Fire whoever is prepping people for these interviews. Like, come on, man.
Yeah, I can't tell. And, part of it is like Kamala Harris is from California. She's a black woman. She's already being labeled as a radical on the basis of her identity and, some stuff she did in California. So I get wanting to play down the radical accusations, but it's like, I don't know. I feel like you can still do the economic populism without being labeled as a radical. I mean, she's not calling for literally communism.
Yeah.
It's just like basic left wing. It's just like, I don't even expect her to go as far as Bernie Sanders would go. Just something closer to that and further away from demonizing immigrants. I don't know.
Who knows? Who knows? And that's why I'm fearful for how she's going to handle the debate stage. Like,
yeah, I don't know.
I still have hope.
Yeah.
I still think it can go well, but a lot of people kind of liked the interview, so that scares me.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. Now, of course, Kamala Harris has been labeled a flip-flopper lately, but I will also say it'd be fair to label Trump as a flip-flopper as well, especially on the issue of reproductive rights, because Trump was just tweeting out or truth socialing that women would have great reproductive rights under his administration.
Of course.
Just completely adopting the liberal language on the issue. Because, if it's murder, not sure how you can be okay with it, but whatever. Trump is also a flip-flopper historically. For weaknesses for Trump, though, of course, he can't control himself.
This is true.
That's sort of mitigated by the microphones being muted, but we'll see. He might call Harris not black to her face. That would be interesting.
That'd be insane.
And then, of course, abortion is a major issue that Trump will be stuck with as he desperately tries to run away from it. And then, to my surprise, Project 2025. Is like a major issue now. I thought it was just confined to motherfuckers like us.
That's what I thought too. And then over the course of a week, it made the jump from the internet to my mom. Like I'm getting messages from people who are like, "What's Project 25?" And I'm like, "I thought this was, damn, that's crazy."
Yeah. So that's I feel like it's become a buzzword, Project 2025. But if it's one that works, stick them with it.
And I think it has been working. That's probably one of the best things that they've been doing. Is just. Honestly, maybe it's becoming kind of a crutch because it's like they really are able to tie a lot of these horrible policy decisions and a lot of the horrible policy outlines in the 900-page document to Project 2025 and use that as this kind of catch-all blanket term.
Yeah, and it's not unwarranted because a lot of people that were formerly on Trump's team in the White House are now working on Project 2025. Yeah. J.D. Vance, I think, wrote the foreword to the Project 2025 document. It's like him and his people are very, very much entangled with the Heritage Foundation on this.
And that's why it's kind of like, this sounds crazy, like just like saying it, but like it's kind of true. I feel like fact-checking organizations like Snopes, like the fact checkers on like Twitter and whatnot, have been kind of making this like right-wing shift, much like media like CNN. Like you saw it with the Snopes article about the people on both sides, about the Charlottesville fact check 4 years, however many fucking years later, where they're like, actually Trump said it, but he kind of didn't maybe. And
then at the end, there was an editor's note that was like, well, Trump also had the wrong interpretation of events, and we're not saying that he was right, but
like, although he did say it, maybe he didn't mean it. And that was presented as a fact check, right? And they fact-checked Harris's statements at one of her rallies that was like, Trump is tied. They're fact-checking claims that say that Trump is tied to Project 2025 because Trump is saying he's not tied to Project 2025. Are you fucking serious right now?
Trump came out 3 weeks ago and was like, I don't know anything about Project 2025 and I wish they would stop. It's like, he's lying.
And it's like Kamala Harris at one of her rallies was like, Trump through Project 2025 wants to instill someone to handle abortion, take away abortion rights. Something that is outlined in Project 2025. They want there to be a fucking abortion cabinet or whatnot in the White House.
Yeah, they want a department that tracks abortions.
Yes, they want states
but not for data collection.
Naturally. They want states who have abortions to have to report all of those abortions to the federal government, creating the goddamn Office of Abortion or whatever with an abortion czar at the head of it.
They want I think it was name, trimester, reason, that kind of thing.
They want to collect that crazy data. That's a Project 2025 proposal outlined in the 900-page document, intimately tied to all of the people that orbit Trump. Therefore, intimately tied to the people Trump will appoint throughout his administration. I don't think he can be separated from Project 2025. The goal of Project 2025 is to get a Republican in the White House. Trump is the fucking Republican that would be in the White House. It is disingenuous to say that Trump is not connected to Project 2025.
Yeah, in the training videos that leaked, they directly say all of this is contingent upon getting Trump elected.
Literally.
They admit it. And it's obviously Trump has former staff tied up in this. J.D. Vance wrote the foreword on it. And on top of all of that, Trump spoke at the Heritage Foundation in, I want to say, 2017. He knows them.
Exactly.
Like, he knows these guys.
He's intimately acquainted.
The Heritage Foundation is one of the major conservative think tanks in the country.
And it's gonna be so infuriating to see the fact checks that come out after the debate whenever Harris tries to get him on a Project 2025 thing to be like, Trump is actually not associated with Project 2025. I'm just already preparing for that because that's gonna be so annoying.
Yeah, he's just lying because it's become politically unfeasible to support the position. And all they did was write down their positions, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, all they did was just, like, put them plain in writing that they want to limit contraception and they want the president to be able to fire every civil servant. Like, it's pretty obvious.
Crazy.
But yeah, that's become a major criticism that I didn't think would, like, stick for real. But
I didn't either.
I guess do you have any other predictions? Are we going to get a she's a Palestinian derogatory like we did?
I don't know.
Biden?
That'd be crazy if you dropped that twice.
Yeah.
But didn't he double down on it?
Yeah, he repeated it a couple times after that,
Maybe
calling him a Palestinian. So maybe we'll get but can't run the same play again. You know what I mean?
Surely not. It's a new opponent.
Yeah.
You got to come up with something different. I think that Gaza will be brought up, and I think Kamala Harris will shoo away the question. There needs to be a deal. We're working really hard to get a deal done. Trump won't get a deal, and then Trump will say, I'd blow up the territory on day one.
That's another thing with, like, co-opting narratives is, like, drawing contrast is important.
Yes.
And if you're just going to do the same thing as your opponent, but your opponent's being a little bit more extreme, and sort of co-opting the historically salient message, which is like strong military, we should support our allies, Arabs don't matter, they're going to win over in that argument.
Yeah.
Arms embargo would be cool.
It'd be cool if we got arms embargo
though.
mentioned on stage, but it's absolutely not happening.
Especially because the median voter doesn't want us to send arms to Israel anymore.
That's true.
It's like a 90% position right there.
Fucking insane.
Yeah. I don't know. It's hard to predict. Last time around when we made predictions, I couldn't have predicted everything that happened.
Oh no,
most of the things that happened.
Genuinely impossible to predict what's going on there.
Yeah.
I guess maybe Kamala Harris tries to, on the debate stage, stick him to the idea that you tanked the immigration bill. That's got to be where any of the immigration questions are going to go. It's, we had a bill, we were going to do the right thing of, I don't know, hurting every immigrant that comes through the border, but Trump wanted us to stop that.
And it's like that was the one spin that they wanted off of that.
Yeah, and they got it.
And then Biden couldn't do it last time, which is like hopefully Kamala Harris can do it. And it's like there's a lot of nuance. There's a lot of reasons that we did not support the bill, but that's the one good narrative they got out of it.
Yes.
At the very least, I hope she can articulate
the one silver lining.
Yes,
we'll say in the fucking storm cloud of a bill that is. If she can't get that across, political malpractice.
Yeah, it's hard to make predictions, especially because that CNN interview was like so nothing.
Yeah, I have no idea how to predict how any of the economy questions are going to go. I guess they're going to try to stick her with Bidenflation because she's part of the administration. They're going to ask her on the debate stage why. I think they'll ask both of them, honestly. Like, Kamala, why haven't you done whatever you want to do during your administration? And Trump, why didn't you do it last term?
Yeah.
Maybe I'm wish casting, though. I don't know.
Yeah, I feel like people believe Trump when he's like, well, I underestimated how big the swamp was type shit.
Yeah, he's got the vibes on lock.
Yeah, and it's just like, it's dumb when she gets to that question, as we've talked about, because vice presidents don't do anything. But I think the best way to avoid the question, or not even avoid, just answer the question, is to say,
we're working on it.
There's more that we want to do. We've been working on it. We've done a lot, but Republicans keep getting in the way, and Trump has blocked deals and so on.
Yeah, and she can flip that swamp thing right on him. She's like, we have had to work with the shitstorm that we were left with after this guy. Like, just say that. Something like that, please.
Yeah. So we'll see. I'm a little worried about it.
Me too.
But together, us in the audience.
That's right.
We'll be there September 10th, of course.
And, we want you to come through with your predictions.
Yeah, in the comments.
And also start thinking up squares for the bingo card.
We got 25 squares to fill, people.
Hey, come on, we gotta fill it up.
I guess 24 if we give ourselves a free space. But look, think about the bingo card. Come prepared next Tuesday, not this Tuesday, next Tuesday, September 10th, and together we'll work it out. But before we move on to our Beyond Parody story, I do want to talk really quickly about debate prep. Of course, we've been prepping you for the debate. Kamala Harris's team has been hopefully prepping her for the debate.
Yeah, guys, I got the call. I've been down there at Camp David with Kamala Harris.
And Trump, of course, has been prepping for the debate. But I got a special little news story.
Oh, yeah.
Out of his debate prep. So Donald Trump recently brought Tulsi Gabbard, former Democratic Congresswoman, on board his campaign team. And she's been one of the debate coaches for this upcoming debate he has with Kamala Harris on September 10th. And I just, For those of you that don't know, Tulsi Gabbard ran for president in 2020. She had one good moment on the debate stage where she sort of trashed unfairly, I think, Kamala Harris for her record as a DA. Yeah. Unfairly in some ways, it's nuanced. But she trashed Kamala Harris for her performance as DA. And that moment went viral and was like credited with sinking Kamala Harris's primary campaign. And that's her only qualification for this.
Yeah, and it's like, that's not even an attack that Trump can levy.
Yeah.
Like that.
Yeah. It's just like, talk about peaking in high school type shit. Like, that's what this is. She had one good moment in 2019, and now she's a debate coach for Donald
Literal
Trump.
Peak, one good moment, lost the primary, dropped out soon after that, and then just switched to be a Republican.
Yeah, grift. It's a crazy grift.
And then she left the left.
Yeah, and it's like if Trump tries to use the same moment Tulsi Gabbard used, and she says like, "Oh, Kamala Harris locked up a bunch of black people in San Francisco," then she'll like win Alabama. You know what I'm saying? Like, what? That doesn't seem like a good idea from Donald Trump.
Exactly, and then she'll win Texas.
Yeah, by like 3 million votes.
Like, oh my God, maybe she will lock up these immigrants coming across the southern border, and then she's good. She's got the law and order narrative.
Yeah, and again, I said it was nuanced at the top because the Tulsi Gabbard attack was like she locked up 1,000 or 2,000 people for marijuana charges or something like that. Apparently, it's more complicated than that. I don't think the number of people locked up, like convicted for drug charges and put in prison, was that high under Kamala Harris's DA-ship in San Francisco. Look, you can look up the stats if you want. But it was one moment.
Yeah.
One moment from Tulsi Gabbard lands her this job, and I don't know. I just think that's silly.
That like went viral, but not like viral. Went viral among like liberals, among not median voters that are actually the people that swing elections.
Yeah.
Like I don't know if she's qualified for this.
Kamala Harris maxed out polling in the primary in 2020 at like 6%, I think. Like the whole time, like her and Tulsi Gabbard were never in contention for leading. It was like Bernie, Warren, and Joe Biden were the front three the whole time. It's like, what are we doing? Yeah, it's silly. Do you ever think, I want to buy my way into heaven?
Always.
I want to buy my way into the good graces of the people that I'm listening to in my ears right now.
That's right.
You can do that if you head over to patreon.com/headintheofficepod. And not only will you be supporting the show, not only will you get early access to all of the content that we produce, but you'll also get an ad-free experience on the Patreon every Sunday, every time we release an episode.
You'll be able to pull up to the sermon on Sunday, on the Lord's Day, to hear the gospel as it's spoken.
Yeah, no more being late, no more interruptions mid-episode if you're listening to this ad right now.
Exactly.
It's on patreon.com/headintheofficepod. It's one of the best ways to support the show. It's one of the longest enduring ways to support the show.
Help buy a pass from all the sins you've committed. Start coming to church.
Yeah.
And we can get things going.
Yeah, that's only if you head over to patreon.com/headintheofficepod. It's in the description. It's there for you. Moving on from debate prep, though, we've got another section of Beyond Parody.
Yes, we do. Oh, my goodness. That sweet, sweet noise.
We're taking a trip to the District of Columbia, more specifically to Arlington National Cemetery for this story, because last week, Donald Trump made what was basically a campaign stop at Arlington National Cemetery, where there was a wreath-laying ceremony for the 13 soldiers who were killed in Afghanistan as we pulled out back in 2021, I believe. Now, there's portions of Arlington where you're not allowed federally, by law, you're not allowed to take photos or videos unless authorized. You can be pictured there by like the authorized photographers, but there's certain areas where you just can't take pictures, hollowed ground and all that, you know what I mean? But Trump and his team, they wanted a photo op anyway, and his team did the photo op anyway, which according to NPR led to, quote, 2 members of Donald Trump's campaign staff had a verbal and physical altercation Monday with an official at Arlington National Cemetery.
Physical altercation is crazy.
Yeah, apparently they were like pushed aside by the Trump team after them saying like, hey, you literally can't do this. It's not allowed.
Oh my God.
The team, of course, denies this ever happened, but it also, the event led to this fucking insane photo of Donald Trump with his thumbs up behind a gravestone. And somebody else rocking the devil horns. It was crazy. If you haven't seen it, I encourage you to look it up.
Let's just go flick it up at the unauthorized. Let's have an unauthorized flick at the Arlington National Cemetery. That's insane.
Crazy.
Like, why would he think that this is a good idea?
I don't know.
Especially heading into the debates. Like, they gotta bring this up. They gotta bring this up.
Now, it doesn't even end there because the fucking United States Army released a statement confirming the story, basically saying that the person at the cemetery, the official that worked there, was basically harassed or pushed aside by the Trump campaign. And they, of course, condemned the event as a whole. They didn't specifically mention Trump's name, but it was very obvious who they were talking about. So in summary, Trump had a crazy flick with a thumb up behind a gravestone smiling. He violated federal law by taking these photos at Arlington National Cemetery. And they messed with an employee for no reason. And then they tried to say that this was bad for the Harris campaign because they didn't show up.
That's insane. At the wreath-laying cemetery for 13 soldiers that died in Afghanistan. Yeah. That's
where it's like, you're not supposed to campaign at a cemetery, dog.
You're not supposed to campaign at like a funeral type thing. You know what I mean? Like that's crazy. That's so like, wow, distasteful, I guess.
Yeah, it's hard to even offer commentary there because it's like, it's so beyond parody that it's hard to even like say anything about it. It's like, you can't do that.
Kamala grabs Tim Walz so that they can kind of further like drive the issue of Trump is disrespectful to veterans. Like that's another reason why you picked Tim Walz. And they just give him an opportunity to talk about that. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Was J.D. Vance there?
I don't think J.D. Vance was there, but he did defend Trump afterwards on some talk show. And I think he said something to the effect of the individual cited in this story was having a mental health episode.
Oh, having a mental health episode. Wow. Okay.
He said, you're fucking crazy. That didn't happen.
And you know, frankly, why are we even talking about this issue when we should be talking about all of the women out there that want to be in the workplace?
Women don't want to have birth anymore.
Women don't want to birth anymore. They don't want to raise children like they were born to do. Golly, man.
Yeah, so that's a crazy story out of Arlington.
That's
Trump in Arlington.
Trump in Arlington. Yeah. That's ridiculous. I hope they try to get him on that.
They ought to.
They ought to.
Yeah.
Again, political malpractice if they don't.
Yeah.
This episode of Head in the Office is brought to you by Ground News.
Media literacy is a key component of our podcast here, but spotting the biases in news and reporting, especially in our nonstop media landscape, can be hard. Thankfully, the folks over at Ground News are working to make this a lot easier.
Ground News is an app and a website that collects news from all around the world and puts it in one place so you can compare coverage, uncover political biases, and learn who is funding each publication.
Ground News has a lot of cool features, such as the bias distribution, which shows you the political leanings of the sources reporting on each story, and the blind spot tab, which highlights stories that are being missed by either the left or the right. Ground News will even tell you your own news bias based on the articles you've read on their site.
If you're interested in Ground News, you can go to check.groundnews/headintheoffice for 15% off. The link is also in the description, and we would suggest taking a look at their Vantage plan to unlock all the fancy features we've referenced before. And subscribing to Ground News also helps out the show, which we know you all want to do.
Very important. Special thanks to Ground News for sponsoring this podcast, and back to the episode.
Now, with the national, federal, like election news out of the way, we got to do our thing. And you know what our thing is.
Geopolitics, baby.
It's geopolitics. This is the number one geopolitics after all.
We got to do the thing that TikTok hates.
Oh my God, I'm saying every time we post a video about this topic, mysteriously it'll get like 200 views, and then our next couple videos get like 1,000 views.
And it's weird because it happens on Instagram as well, but it's very specifically when we say things like Gaza, Israel, or ceasefire.
Yeah.
The apps do not like it.
No, absolutely not.
We'll talk about, Tim Walz. We'll talk about a silly story with J.D. Vance, and that'll get the normal amount of views, or even we'll go viral sometimes. We talk about Israel and Gaza, unless it's something that is like unambiguously, I don't even know if I can say that because the Haaretz story was unambiguously crazy.
Yeah.
But like, unless it hits the algorithm in the right way, it will just completely get censored.
Or maybe if it's like too aggressively Israel is doing something crazy, because that's kind of what the Haaretz story was, because they were aggressively doing something insane.
Yeah.
The algorithm does not fuck with that. But either way, we're here to talk about the news, the geopolitical news, because that's what we bring you, because we are the number one geopolitics podcast. We have to give some updates out of Gaza. And this week, once again, really no ceasefire updates. I don't think any of us are surprised at that news, but there is some updates.
There's these fragile negotiations happening.
Yeah, fragile negotiations are going on. I can't really talk about it or give you any information.
I don't want to disrupt these fragile negotiations.
I'm going to hold this press conference, and you can come talk to me and ask questions, but just know that they will not be answered. The type shit went on this week.
When we're on live stream, if you guys ask us about Israel Gaza, I'm going to be like, I'm sorry, I cannot speak to that. There are delicate negotiations happening right now.
There are things going on in the background, complex moving parts in this situation. I just would not want to be the person that disrupts those. I'm sorry, I cannot answer that question. So moving on.
I wonder if in Kamala Harris's mind if that's why she doesn't like commit to an arms embargo or something.
You think she's been hanging around with John Kirby too much?
Yeah, she's like convinced if she says something that'll disrupt the delicate negotiations.
I genuinely think that's what's going on. I genuinely think she cannot get on there and commit to an arms embargo if she wants to.
Yeah.
I've still got a little bit of hope in me, right? That she does want that, because if she says arms embargo, then I mean, Hamas has no reason to negotiate.
And Israel would stop negotiating. Yeah.
Exactly, because if they know they're just going to get it, then why even come to the table at all? But I mean, like I've been saying for the past couple months, they're not really negotiating.
It's not going to happen anyway.
And like we're going to dive into right now, they're not really negotiating it anyway. So this week, protests erupted in Israel after the bodies of 6 hostages were recovered by the IDF. The protests kind of centered around this ever-present fact that no progress has been made whatsoever with regard to the ceasefire deal. Specifically, a ceasefire deal that would bring back the remaining 70 living hostages back home. There's still about, I think articles say there's like 108 hostages. There's around 70 that are alive and 36 that are believed to be dead. 6 were just recovered this weekend, right? Dead, of course.
Yeah.
The protesting Israelis are sort of explicitly blaming Netanyahu for his failure to bring these 6 people back home alive, which is true and good.
Yeah.
That's exactly what has been going on.
The good way to direct the blame, I think that's morally righteous.
Exactly. Morally righteous protest going on there. Bro needs to speed it up. Bro needs to start negotiating, right? And the bodies of these 6 hostages were found in an underground tunnel. A military spokesperson said that the army believed there were hostages in that area, but had no specific intelligence. He said Israeli forces found the bodies several dozen meters underground as, quote, ongoing combat was underway, but that there was no firefight in the tunnel itself. He said there was no doubt that Hamas had killed them. Hamas said that those hostages would still be alive had Israel accepted the July ceasefire proposal Biden was touting. And while...
So Hamas just admitted to it?
Kind of,
That's
I think.
crazy.
I honestly...
I condemn Hamas.
I do condemn Hamas.
Yeah.
I wouldn't put it past Hamas to have done something like that. And I mean, they're kind of maybe admitting that. And I want to be clear while I get into kind of analyzing the situation further. I don't want to give Hamas any credit, right? Obviously, taking the hostages is bad. Obviously, October 7th was bad. Everybody here would still be alive had they not done that. You know what I mean? I don't want us to not forget that that's kind of underscoring this whole thing. But in the context of where we are right now, because we can't go back, it happened. In the context of where we are now, there's literal truth to what they're saying, right? And kind of stay with me through this next bit, because it's all going to come together at the end. I want to talk about this Axios article that came out this week about an Israeli cabinet meeting that happened. Axios reports that Netanyahu and Yoav Gallant, the Israeli defense minister, got into a shouting match at a recent cabinet meeting this week over details about the ceasefire deal. Netanyahu and the rest of his cabinet are just unwavering in their assertion that the IDF must remain in control of the Philadelphia corridor. We talked about it last week. It's the corridor that runs along Gaza and Egypt's border. Israel's worried that terrorists will be able to smuggle weapons in to rearm Hamas if they aren't in control of that. Both Hamas and Egypt are opposed to this idea. However, the United States backs it.
Of course.
So that's another thing that kind of complicates Biden's end of the negotiations that are going on, which sucks. You know what I mean? Because Hamas and I guess Egypt here are demanding a complete withdrawal of IDF forces from Gaza before the ceasefire deal can be accepted. Something that, I would think is acceptable. I want the ceasefire. So do multiple people.
You can't really have a ceasefire if you're actively occupied,
Exactly. There's not really great plausible deniability there, especially when IDF soldiers in occupied territory have proven to do heinous things the last 20, 40 years, however long this thing has been going on, you know what I mean? And this issue is the sort of critical impasse that's stalling these negotiations. From everything that we compile throughout the weeks of there being a deal that's right on the edge, this is the issue that's stopping it. So this is what's holding everything up. Gallant is rightfully pointing that out. Bibi called an on-the-spot vote for the cabinet to adopt this, holding the Philadelphia corridor as official Israeli policy, and Gallant responded with, quote, "We have to choose between Philadelphia and the hostages. We can't have both. If we vote, we might find out that either the hostages will die or we will have to backtrack to release them." Gallant is rightfully pointing out that the longer they wait, the more they are risking the lives of these 72 people that are still alive. Some of them children, literal children with their mother being held hostage by Hamas, right? Gallant also added, quote, As the prime minister, you are authorized to bring a vote to any decision you want, including executing these hostages.
Damn.
Banger framing.
Yeah.
You know what I'm
Yoav
saying?
Gallant's not even like a hero.
No, he's not.
I think he's just like a moderate right-wing
He's also
guy.
there's also a portion of this kind of meeting where he was framing a lot of his opposition to holding onto the Philadelphia corridor as, guys, we can't be occupied with Gaza. We have to be occupied with the enemies that are surrounding us, Hezbollah and Iran.
Oh, great.
So you know what I mean? He's
Yeah.
like, we need to back up and prepare for them to do something rather than being having all our ducks in this basket. So it's like, I don't know. He's not a saint.
Marginally better.
He's not a
Yeah.
saint, but this is the appropriate framing to bring to what Netanyahu is doing with regards to these ceasefire negotiations. A vote to adopt this as unwavering policy is a vote to get these hostages killed, because the longer you wait, the more of them will die. That's just something that's going on. It's an unambiguous fact, right? And at least some of these hostages would have literally made it out had Israel just accepted the deal. Furthermore, families of the hostages who are justifiably upset at how their government's been handling this situation have called for a complete halt of the country to push a ceasefire deal.
Well, like a general strike type shit?
Literally a general strike in conjunction. Israel's largest trade union is calling for a general strike on Monday to pressure Netanyahu. The union has around 800,000 members across the country, including like healthcare, transportation, and banking. The airport will be shut down because airline workers are included in this. And there's a recent history of success when it comes to general strikes in Israel. The country's
so small,
The country's so small.
It's like a tenth of the population right there.
Exactly. It's a lot more feasible to do. But also last year there was a general strike after Netanyahu's court reform that was really just make the court worse. You know what I mean? It successful stalled the plan from being implemented. So like,
go crazy then. I mean, I support that.
That's pretty good. But other than that, moving back to Yoav Gallant and his sort of opposition to this Philadelphia corridor nonsense and getting the hostages back home, an anonymous Israeli official confirmed the report and added that 3 of the 6 hostages that were recovered this week dead were slated to be released in the first wave of the ceasefire deal that was proposed in July.
Yeah. As we've been saying for months, a ceasefire would get the hostages out.
These people would be alive had Netanyahu not backed out of that deal. Hamas agreed to it. Whether or not you want to, I don't know, give them credit or say that was in good faith or whatever, up to you. But either way, from what we know about how these negotiations have unfolded, Israel, Netanyahu is the person that pulled out of that deal. These people would literally be alive. 3 of those people would have been immediately released.
And it's like, okay, again, you can blame Hamas for taking the hostages. I condemn Hamas. But look, I contend with the conditions as they're presented to me.
Exactly.
And as a leader of a country, especially if you're dealing with a terrorist group like Hamas, you got to deal with them as you deal with them. You can't just say like, no, I condemn Hamas. Everything Hamas does is bad, and then do nothing to actually try to get your people out. Getting your people out should be the first thing that you try to do.
Right. And that's something that he has leveraged in his rhetoric surrounding the issue. He has constantly talked about how we need to bring them home. He wore he's been wearing like the bring them home yellow ribbon pin, like all around the places, while he is actively choosing to not bring them home, while he is actively doing things that is jeopardizing their safety by stalling these negotiations. And I just kind of want to zoom out.
And it's like, because the whole thing that Netanyahu and like the further right wing, the actual fascists.
Ben Gvir.
And Benny Gantz.
There's a lot of them,
their goal here is to eradicate Hamas, and in doing so, they will also kill their own people that are in the Gaza Strip, because you want to eradicate Hamas, you got to get rid of all of Hamas, and some of Hamas are with the hostages.
Exactly. Exactly.
There's no world where you can bomb the entire Gaza Strip and save the people that they took as well.
And just, I kind of want to zoom out when it comes to the scenario with the hostages in general, and broadly when it comes to this, and really every other aspect of Israeli policy pertaining to the war and what they've been trying to do. What they've been trying to do hasn't worked, and this is especially apparent when we look at how they've dealt with hostages. There's an AP article that came out this week that focused on how negotiations have been far more effective in bringing hostages home than rescues have been. What do you think the ratio is between rescued and brought home from like negotiations?
What do you mean rescued and brought home?
Like, there have been some hostages that have been rescued by the IDF.
Oh, like people on the ground.
People on the ground. And there are some hostages that were released last November in like that humanitarian pause that we have. What do you think the ratio is?
It's got to be like 1 to 100, right?
Well, it's like 1 to like 11.
Oh,
you know
real?
what I'm saying?
Okay.
So last November,
because I was just thinking we got like 100 people out in November, didn't we?
exactly,
Yeah.
we got 105 people out
Yes, okay.
as a result of diplomacy. And of the ones that have been rescued, we have a female soldier who was immediately rescued after October 7th, 2 men who were rescued from a heavily guarded apartment building. During this rescue in February, 60 Palestinians were killed, including women and children, as the AP notes. 4 hostages were rescued in June in an event we covered that left
Yes,
210 Palestinians dead. In like this botched raid of some building that they were being held in, and they got 1 guy this week. Also notable, the IDF killed 3 hostages in Gaza after mistaking them for threats and shooting them.
Yeah.
That's crazy. They've rescued
that.
8 people. To rescue those 8 people, they needed to kill what? At least 270 Palestinians? I guarantee you 270 Hamas members were not in there. Hamas are not children at the very least. You know what I mean? The ratios that have been released for every other airstrike they've done have been abysmal. That's people that have just been caught in collateral damage, right? To get these people back home. When we could just get them back through a ceasefire.
And this is just what we know about. Like, I'm
Exactly.
sure there are some operations that have been thoroughly covered up for how bad they went. Like, there's got to be some stuff we don't know.
And those are just deaths, right? That does not include casualties. That does not include the people who were maimed and the kids who were orphaned. Like,
Yeah, or all the people that are suffering because of lack of access to medicine, hospitals generally,
Exactly.
food, and that kind of thing.
so it's like, it's kind of clear what's working and what isn't here.
Yeah.
You got half of the hostages back when you had a humanitarian pause in November.
Yeah.
You couldn't do it again?
You would have got them all back if you just kept doing the same thing.
All they needed to do was keep what? Exchanging Palestinian prisoners,
Yeah,
which it's arguable that they're hostages as well. So many people held in Israeli prisons, so many Palestinians held in Israeli prisons are held without charges.
Yeah, no charges. And a lot of them are kids. There's like kids
There's
in
like 12-year-olds in
Yeah.
there held on no charges.
there. Yeah, throwing rocks.
Talk about a hostage.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
And it's like this reflects especially poorly on the Biden administration because again, if we would have just kept doing the same thing that we started to do in November, then maybe this would be an irrelevant issue in the sense of the election.
Yeah.
But it's clearly not because we've allowed it to go on so long. And it is partially the fault of the Biden administration for not putting your foot down and saying like, no, we're going to do this, otherwise no more weapons.
Especially when there's tremendous leverage back in October when
Yeah.
it was already going on. It's pretty easy to keep going something that's already
And it's
going.
like Biden's, for the most part, out of step with the Democratic Party on this. And
Yeah.
right now it seems like Kamala Harris is as well. I don't know how many like senators and House members of the Democratic Party would vote for like a full arms embargo, but I know the vast majority of them want a ceasefire, and that's not the direction we're heading right now with how we deal with these delicate negotiations, quote unquote.
And at least when we negotiate, we could kind of put pressure and say we will arms embargo you.
Yes,
Whether
at the
it's
very least.
disingenuous
Yeah.
or not, I think the threat alone is enough to kind of get them in lockstep. You know what I mean? Because they cannot keep doing what they're doing without us, and that's kind of crazy.
Plain and simple.
That's kind of crazy,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? But just overall, when it comes to the hostages, you get 8 back by vicious fighting that has caused immense collateral damage, or you get 105 back pretty easily. They just walk across. And when you do the diplomacy thing, you don't have to risk going and hurting them yourself.
Yeah.
Because we don't know, while we know that those 3 were killed by the IDF, we don't know how many hostages have been injured in just the wanton airstrikes that have
Yeah.
been going on throughout the region. Like, it's hard to believe that some of them haven't been hit by something.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. And like you said at the top, like if Hamas did just like kill the 6 that you talked about initially, obviously bad.
Despicable. Yeah.
Horrible, evil action to do.
I don't agree with the philosophy of hostage taking.
But it is the case that Netanyahu had the chance to get him back.
Exactly. And it is the case that Netanyahu and his government are refusing to contend with the solutions that are right in front of them that would guarantee their safety.
Yeah.
And that's why hostage families are so mad. That's why people in Israel are so mad that there is a general strike that's going to happen.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah. And, you know, Kamala Harris and Joe Biden have been not even touting, but just kind of repeating that they both want a 2-state solution. That's kind of been the status quo position to, at least verbally, has been the status quo position. But I feel like when I hear elected Democrats say this now, it's like it doesn't really mean anything at all. If you're just going to say, I want a 2-state solution, then do nothing to bring it about. I just don't care if that's what you say now.
And it's also
at this
like,
point. I just don't believe
what
you.
state do the Palestinians have to inherit at this point? You know what they have? 70% of the infrastructure in some city was just bombed to the ground. You know what I mean? Like, what state would they have should new borders be dropped anyway? How do they even decide what borders would be dropped? They can Trump could barely do that when he was proposing deals that would give all of the fucking fertile land to Israel.
Yeah, exactly. Not to mention that the West Bank and Gaza has continued to shrink in size over time as Israel and the IDF take more and more of it. So, I mean, I have a hard time believing them when they say they want a two-state solution.
I also do, and I think it's just kind of a cop-out for them to feign progressiveness on the issue when they can so easily see that the winds are kind of shifting. But that's just me.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And that's just kind of the hostage situation as we have it right now.
Yeah.
Clear ways to get them back that they are not doing. But in other Gaza news, as a response to the just polio outbreaks.
That's crazy.
Crazy hearing that in 2024. The polio outbreaks that have been happening in Gaza due to the awful conditions that Gazans are subjected to, Israel has agreed to a series of three-day pauses in fighting in specific regions so that aid workers can get in and do vaccine drives to help stop the spread
of polio.
Of polio.
In 2024.
Something that we've beat, you know what I mean?
A while ago.
Like, we figured that out a minute ago.
Yeah.
And conditions are so bad here. It is such a humanitarian crisis that it's back.
Yeah.
That's fucking nuts.
Yeah, three-day pauses, like, okay, cool, but Band-Aid on a bullet wound, maybe literally.
Absolutely, yeah. And it's also like the reports that are talking about these three-day pauses are also putting out caveats that say, like, aid workers and people who run these organizations are kind of worried that IDF soldiers aren't going to follow them.
Yeah.
There's precedent for that. Like, unfortunately, there is precedent. We talk about damn near like every month how there was an instance of there being a humanitarian safe zone and then a strike was carried out in there because the predominant IDF policy is this idea that if there's a Hamas target, we are going after it.
We are shooting through the human shield.
Yeah, and when they set their own rules, they haven't been able to follow them. You know what I mean? So it's like, I don't know. I'd be kind of freaked out too.
Yeah.
I'd be kind of freaked out too.
Especially with, we covered it, oh God, I don't know, like maybe 4 or 5 months ago. It was not the World Food something.
World Food Kitchen?
Yeah. The cars that were just like bombed repeatedly by the IDF, directly targeted, like aid workers, unambiguous. One of them was an American and we didn't do anything about it. Yeah. I mean, I'd be pretty worried for my life too. I don't think I'd be brave enough to go into Gaza.
I'd be kind of scared. It's a fucking scary place because of what Israel's doing. Like, can't say it enough. Can't say it enough. But I guess our last story to sort of come out this week that was more like notable and different than the regular tragedy that's just been kind of happening. The airstrikes.
Banality of evil. Yeah. Genocide.
Exactly. And we'll kind of get into that. This week we had the death of, I'm going to probably butcher this name, forgive me. I think it's Mito Halimi. Okay. And this 19-year-old, was a Gazan who gained a lot of social media attention over the course of this genocide for his, he called them his tent life, like vlogs that he would post to TikTok. Yeah. And he just made videos that sort of documented his day-to-day life in one of these humanitarian safe zone tent cities. He just, it's a vlog. He wakes up. He does nothing. He waits in line for drinking water. He does nothing. He tries to make food. He does nothing. Yeah. It's just showcasing his life. And throughout the whole thing, he maintained this just really like positive attitude. He was planting plants and being like, you know, even though there's a bunch of death around me, I'm trying to just do good. There's still life that can be made, life that can be fostered. We can still have things to look forward to, right? And he was just this like fucking kid that was trying to just cope.
Yeah, do you know how old he was?
19 years old.
Okay, so not old enough to have voted for Hamas, by the way.
Very notably. Yeah. Just old enough to be, like, born in the wrong time. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? He just made his videos. He hung out on TikTok Live, talked to people, and tried to just be a good guy and have a positive attitude. And he was killed this week in an airstrike. And it was an airstrike that hit a car that was on the road, that was outside of the internet cafe that he was... I say internet cafe, but it's just a tent with Wi-Fi.
Yeah, okay.
Where he was catching up with one of his friends who is also going through the same horrible thing right now. Yeah. And he was hit with the shrapnel from this explosion. And I think outside of it being so tragic, because it's almost more close to home than than the other 40,000 deaths that have been going on, because he was this TikToker. It was this person that you could kind of have a parasocial relationship with, right? Yeah. Posting videos and whatnot. He was victim to just the ordinary evil of this whole occupation.
Yeah.
The airstrike wasn't even meant for him. He was just a casualty. And that kind of underscores like what is wrong with this entire thing. How many of the other 40,000 people who were slaughtered were also just kind of victims to ordinary evil. Were also just casualties in airstrikes that weren't meant for them. From what the IDF themselves have released, it's a lot.
Well, and it doesn't matter who it's meant for at that point. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like it's another death that the IDF caused that they'll never be accountable for.
Yeah.
All for like a Hamas guy that might have been in the car. I guess we'll never know.
Or maybe a Hamas guy.
Yeah.
Or just a guy that maybe was Hamas. We don't know.
A guy that might have been in the Hamas that might have not even been in the car that got hit that ended up killing this kid as well. Like what? It's insane. Yeah, the banality of evil. It's just another life snuffed out for no reason other than a genocide.
What are we doing, bro?
Yeah.
Like I don't understand how people can still just like look at this and support it. You know?
Yeah, it's bad. Geopolitics is bad.
They are.
Is that the end of our Gaza news?
I think that's the end of our Gaza news this week. Hopefully next week, ceasefire.
Ceasefire deal?
Ceasefire
Biden
deal.
comes through with the ceasefire deal.
I swear to God, Biden is on huffing more copium than people who think that Gojo will be back in the next 4 chapters.
In other geopolitical news, I just wanted to throw in here, not a full section. I saw there was some headlines about Macron screwing over the left-wing party in France.
Naturally.
We talked a few weeks ago about how the French elections, they do it in 2 rounds, and there was this historic level of strategic voting from the center and the more left-wing parties in the country, where they would like strategically drop out on different ballots so that the far right could not win a majority, and it worked.
Yeah.
The far right was projected to win the most amount of seats in parliament. They ended up with a 3rd most amount of seats, and it was this big W for coalition voting, harm reduction voting. And then most recently, Macron started just meeting with far right leaders.
Yes.
I'm guessing because he feels as though he can't get whatever policies done that he wants to get done with the more left-wing party.
Even though he just
parliament.
proved that you can work with them. He just proved that you can form a coalition government to seize power away from these people. I don't know why. Like, right-wingers in France are insane, too. Like,
well, European.
You know what I'm saying? Like, oh my God. Like, I don't know
proximity to Germany. That's all it is.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I don't know why we would think that we could ever negotiate with the far right more than we could with the people who have already proven that they can come together with us to win.
Yeah, you had like communists dropping out of elections so that the centrists could win.
Insane.
So that the far right candidate wouldn't like they wouldn't split the vote and the far right candidate would win.
Damn near unprecedented.
Yeah.
God.
And everybody like around the world was like, okay, good shit. Like if France pulled that off, that's good.
This is great. God damn
just for Macron to platform the far right people. I don't know how serious this will be. I think it was just a series of meetings, but if it ends up being like a broader I suppose like legislative strategy, then that's just like, what was it for? You know what I mean? It's silly, but that's other geopolitical news. To end off the show today, just some extra news out of Texas.
Yes.
If you are a Texan listener, I would suggest checking your voter registration.
Yeah.
Because Texas just purged 1 million voters from their voter rolls with only about 65 days left until the election in November. Now, for context, about 11 million people voted in the 2020 presidential election in Texas, and Trump only beat Biden by about 600,000
votes. They purged 1 million people?
1 million people. Yes.
They purged, was that like 9% or something like that?
Yeah, about 9% of the vote total in 2020.
That's insane.
Yeah, when the margins in Texas have been shrinking ever so slightly. And, Trump won by 6% or 5% in 2020, but that is pretty close.
But it's like...
It's Texas.
It's Texas, yeah. That's...
Because if Texas goes blue, that's it. Like, the swing states don't matter anymore. It's like 35 or 40 electoral votes. But Greg Abbott, governor of Texas and enemy of the show and demon in human skin.
Yep.
Straight up malicious Greg Abbott argued that half of the 1 million voters that were purged from the rolls had died, and a few thousand were either registered illegally or they were felons and are not allowed to vote.
What about everybody else, though?
Which is a whole other issue, and that's what I'm getting to. The other 463,000 were on what is called the suspense list, which is a list of voters that are suspected to have moved to a new address. They're sent a renewal letter. And if they don't update their information, they don't respond to the state, and they don't vote in 2 election cycles, you're automatically removed from the voter rolls. And that was 463,000 people that just got removed from the voter rolls.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah. Now, of course, there's a big possibility for false positives here. Seems like it's almost guaranteed with the system that automatically unregisters people, because that's about 500,000 people that are now no longer registered to vote in Texas. And on top of that, of course, Greg Abbott signed SB 1 into law back in 2021 that restricts voting options for Texans. It cracks down on overnight early voting hours, restricts drive-through voting and mail-in voting, and it bans counties from sending out absentee ballot applications proactively to people that haven't requested one.
So it bans counties from encouraging people to vote.
Basically,
that's
And absentee voting is already restricted pretty heavily in Texas. Like in Michigan, you can do it for any reason.
Yeah.
I think you need to have a specific reason to vote absentee in Texas. And counties can't even send out applications to people that would qualify.
And I imagine Texas doesn't have same-day voter registration.
I would guess not.
Michigan.
I would guess not.
Which is something like when you're being purged from the voter rolls and you don't know unless you're who actively checks their voter registration?
Nobody.
That's what I'm saying. Exactly. I'm not doing it, and I care about this stuff. Yeah, you know what I'm saying?
All this is meant to do is confuse people when they get to the polls and keep them from voting.
Yeah.
Which, to be fair, is the only way Ted Cruz can win in November. Let's be fair.
Yeah, facts.
And then, of course, we also had Ken Paxton, the Attorney General of Texas, another demon.
Oh, that guy loves making lists.
He just had a voting group called LULAC Raided, accusing them of registering non-citizens to vote. This group specifically focused on Latina and Latino voters registering them to vote.
So the connection is clear.
Yeah, and they just were raided by Ken Paxton's Attorney General, Ken Paxton's folks, I guess, in the Attorney General's
office. I don't think
office.
we're raiding any groups of white people that attempt to register people to vote.
No, this is purely a group dedicated to like getting people of Hispanic origin out to vote. Yeah,
interesting.
Isn't that awesome?
Interesting. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
So bad. If you're in Texas, I know we have. For some reason,
damn near plurality.
I think, it might be a plurality of listeners, like, I don't know, 12% or something like that are from Texas. So if you're in Texas, especially if you live in like the bluer areas where I'm going to guess this was targeted at, make sure to check your voter registration, especially if you're not that active of a voter.
If you're in Texas and you've moved, make sure you check that out.
Yeah, and I think in 2020, Ken Paxton said like there was a similar like purging of voter rolls and stuff like that in 2020. And I think Ken Paxton said afterwards like, oh, if we didn't do that, if we didn't stop all these like mail-in ballots, then Democrats would have won the state. So something to consider.
If we didn't stop people from voting, then it would. Then they would have voted.
Texas, like Georgia, is one of those states that has enough Democrats that we should be winning the state.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of voter suppression, really.
It's crazy how every 2 years it seems like around this time you always hear about stories of the voter rolls being checked out.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting how that works.
Yeah, we got an election in like 2 months. Got to make sure that people can't vote. Because it's like, it almost, even if it's like 10% of the people on that list that didn't deserve to be canceled, that's 100,000 people that can't vote. That's like, at least for the Ted Cruz Senate race, is like an election swinging total.
That's a percent of the vote. Yeah. And points are a lot, guys. Like that's a lot, especially when you're only winning by 5 or 6. You need every point you can get.
Especially lower the turnout, the more individual votes matter. It's a whole thing. But
ridiculous.
If you're in Texas, make sure you're still registered. I don't know what the process is. I'm guessing it takes like a year to check. But
I'm saying there's probably multiple different forms. Yeah. You probably have to wait for the mail to, like the snail mail to get to you, and then mail your form in, then mail it back, and then mail it in. It's not like the superior Midwest.
We really shouldn't have a state-by-state like voting systems. You know what I mean? Like in Michigan, I could just, it takes me 2 minutes to check voter registration.
Yeah.
You go on michigan.gov/vote, you figure it out. But in Texas, I have no idea how to do it.
You type in like select information. They tell you straight up you're registered or you're not. And they tell you what county you're registered in.
Your
like,
precinct.
What precinct
when
you
it's
need to
open,
go
when
to.
it closes. Yeah. It's
and
great.
I still need to figure out what my precinct is when I show up to the ballot box. Like, I'm like, wait, where am I? Okay.
Jocelyn Benson has led this country to communist utopia, along with Jared Goff, of course.
Yeah, naturally.
Whitmer, Benson, and Jared Goff leading Michigan to a revolution.
And same-day voter registration. You decide day of, I want to go vote. You just go vote, and then you go like a block over to go to the fucking elementary school you're voting at. And you're good. Your vote's in. It takes like maybe an hour if it's super busy.
Yeah. And absentee voting has saved me a bunch of times. Exactly. It's super easy. Yeah.
And you can just get it. You can just request the ballot and get it. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Man.
And of course, all of this is framed in the context of like voter fraud is this big issue we need to combat. And of course, as we've said many times, voter fraud is a non-existent issue in the United States.
Yeah. Functionally it doesn't happen.
There are people that, vote for their dead relatives, but it's not a broad systemic issue, and it's usually people that are voting for Trump anyway.
I was going to say, I do recall back in 2020 when there was actual investigations into this stuff, most of the people who were voting for dead relatives or voting multiple times were Republicans.
Yeah, so exactly. Like it's hard enough to vote once in a state like Texas.
I'm saying.
Crazy. Anyways, that brings us to the end of this episode. Remember, we will be live on September 10th. That's a Tuesday, 8 p.m. Eastern time. You guys better come out. We will be fundraising again for PCRF. And, of course, watching the debate live together with analysis from your favorite commentators.
That's precisely, exactly. Watch us. Don't go watch Hassan. Don't go watch anybody else. Don't watch The Majority Report.
Definitely don't watch them.
Watch Head in the Office.
Yeah, Sam Cedar is an enemy of the people.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we don't fuck with them at all, and that's why you shouldn't tune into their stuff when it's airing at the same time as ours.
Never. But it's time to thank the people that make it possible.
Yes, it is, and we got to give a special thanks to these people who are hopefully registered to vote.
And the people that are going to be getting postcards in October at some point.
Pretty damn soon, if I do say so myself. Special thanks to Caden Kraut, Lord Tal the Radiant, Chris the Postman, Christy Beck, Dylan B., Andrew Harris, Mike Chaplinsky, Mattias T., Omar Zuno, Clayton LaFed, Mark Yeager, Caleb Joy, Rich Toro Tari, Gavin Mayer, Maldonado, Hunter W., Fergalaki, Max Vezquez, Jacob Rogers, Colton Mooberry, Fixer Punk, Jim Egbers, Jeff Muzzy, Big Burrito, Cincy Alex, Joe Stenstrom, Adrian Sandoval, Chloe Samsico 1, Colleen Cuts, Very Yuck, Jennifer DeVoe, Big Bird Titty, Crawfish, and Bennett Bennington III, Alexia Benanti, Nietzsche, Big Booty Beatdown, Sam Melody, Two-Headed Boy, Ben Shapiro's Boyfriend, Ted Cruz's Boy Toy, Dictator Jace, Luke O'Shea, Cucker Tarlson, Danielle Jackson, The Word of Microsoft, Jennifer Science, Aaron and His Gundam Gundams, Darth Father, Tailored for Contact, Corey Chambers, Ellie N., Devin Hatchard, Retro Mondo, Emma the Doot Slayer, Veronica aka V, Raxon, Ash Smith, The Grotler, Flower Clown, Beetlebugs, Murder in a Trench Coat, Lonnie Rogers, Slavic and Sapphic, Casey Lynn Kelly, Snake Eyes, and Hope of Giants, AK Gon, Aquana, Don,
Zach Lantian, Info Russell, Austin Greif, Marcus Corbett, Caleb Roper, Taylor Rensock, Cami, Tylen Freeman, Steak Daddy, Tay Tay, Isaac Hodges, Madeline C., Kayla Lowe, Anna Valenic, Casey C., Say Yes to West, August, Particular Pikmin, Sir Capalot, Jeff Signs, Howard the Duck, Brennan is Egg, JR, Drew Batchilder, Froggy Gumdrop, Zen doing their best, Jackie Boy, Shameless, Coherent Babbles, Sasha, MJ is Sharp, Michaela Muncie, The Wallace 3000, Jared Finch, Tactical Snowflake, Son of Ander, Vanilla Bryce, Chris T, Kishan Lala, Amanda R, Hanky Panky, Tyler J, Damian Blues, Ashley White, Dick Cheney in 3-inch heels, Lalo Valesco, Particulon, Memfrez, Gorgeous Girl Mukes, Lauren, Uncrasmatic Boar, Sasquatch, Rhonda Stiletto, Midwest Marxist, Joe the Mailman, Gary from West Michigan, Shawnee GG, Juniper Not Jupiter, Stacked Crabs, Patrick Simpson, I Crowley, Urban Peach, Lord of Forlorn, Holt Forsyth, Dialectic Dreamer, Kevin Kisaya, Schnoodle, Booty Snakes, Erica, Krusty Krab, Do Fairy, Chelceratops, Austin Lima, Lane Waltz, Azim Fida Hussein, Brooklyn G, Noverk the Dastardly, Goldthorn, Addie Book, Merlin, and My Mom. Thank you all so much for supporting the show on Patreon. If you want your name on this list, go become a patron.
Please do.
That's the only way to do it.
That's literally it.
And if you want early access to episodes, I mean, shit, it comes along with it.
Come on, I'm saying now you could be with us when we're prepping for debates.
And make sure to show up for the live stream. You better be there.
And then you could watch today's episode and be like, God damn, those fucking Wednesday weenies. You know what I'm saying? Just messing up the schedule when they also want to mess up the schedule by putting the debate on Tuesday. Like, what's going on?
If you want 2 episodes a week, make it the full-time job.
I'm saying.
I'm waiting.
If you want to complain right there with us, you know what to do.
Come on.